be continuing this and other types of conversation and inviting people into work and deeper reflection. And so it'd be great to be supportive of our new sister and friend, Dr. Phillis Sheppard. So that information, the save the date, is on the table. And I believe some of us are already making a commitment to both sojourn and to reunite in short time with each other at this event. So for more information, visit the information table out front or talk to some of the respective individuals that are a part of these projects from the center and from Vanderbilt. All right, with that being said, any other housekeeping that we need to do? All right. Once again, can you help me by saying thank you to the Missouri Health Foundation and other sponsors on today by saying just simply these words, thank you. Thank you. It is duly noted. All right. Some of y'all laughing because y'all been to church. Amen. That sounds like a preacher. Don't get nervous. I'm not going to take offering. That's why I mentioned the Missouri Health Foundation and other sponsors. That's what made it possible for you to dine as you dine and to come without cost to this gathering, and then hopefully what is going to further allow us to be a hospitable host to our visitors. With that being said, we have been encouraged, challenged by those who kind of navigate the academy. I think we were remiss in not acknowledging Pastor Lawler's work, not only in the community here, but also as he is a director of the Walker Institute at the Eaton Seminary. And that space and that initiative is focused on further developing practitioners and the alike professionals around how do they theologically inform and undergird their work in development of community and otherwise, particularly with economic focus. And so we have had those points of view and understanding from the academy. We've had a leader from the front lines and who advocates cross lines, and Sister Kim. And now we wanted to invite some artisans, creative spirit and practitioners of the art to come and share with us. And we're thankful to have both David Whittingham, who will follow Victoria Walls. They respectively are part of our work here at the Center for Social Empowerment. They also engaged the Academy, with David being a MFA student on his last mile of the way, I should say, at WashU. And then Victoria Walls, who is formerly poet laureate of University of Missouri St. Louis, and now most recently a poet in residence with the Center on Social Empowerment, will be coming to share with us their challenge and their charge as it relates through the arts. So without any further ado, Madam, will you please come and, sir, in your own way, welcome her with applause and greetings and beauty or snaps.
When the black body is grounded, how do we teach about the blood and summertime oranges? I'm originally from Tennessee. I grew up in Nashville my entire life. I also grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood with white schools, white neighbors, everything. So one of my friends when I was in high school, I won't omit her name, not that she would ever know, but she said something very problematic to me when we were in high school. It was around February. At the end of February. So we had just gotten back from school. It's the most wonderful time of the year. It's Black History Month, right? And then she says to me, I don't really know why we need to learn about this stuff anymore. It's over. So when I was asked to do this, to talk about the power of memory and the importance of memory, that was the first thing that came to my mind. Okay? I don't talk to that person anymore, don't worry. I scrubbed her from my social network. But this past weekend, I went back to Nashville. My best friend of 15 years is expecting a daughter, Jubilee for short, next month. So we're celebrating her baby shower. And we did the thing that friends do when like the first one gets married and has kids and everything. You start like reflecting on youth and ignoring the fact that we're still really young, but we're pretending like we're sage and wise and everything. And we're recalling all these memories from being children. And I realized something really interesting, which was that the things that were most pleasant were harder to remember. The things that were most painful came out very, very quickly, very easily. So we were entertaining the fantasy of growing old together while also dredging up all of these old memories of the good and bad things that happened to us when we were young. One of those pleasant memories, I'll share with you anyway, was being on a roof and me tasting bourbon for the first time like a good Tennessean lady. Okay? Some other negative memories included, you know, my first bout of stage fright where I basically like got sick and ran off stage, which I'm going to try not to do today. Bad breakups, fights with family, coming out processes, all kinds of things. And it was those latter traumatic memories that just spewed out of us. It was like we could remember all the sensations that went into those. So that brings me to my next anecdote, which is that on the way back, because Illinois is like the most boring plane in the country, I like to listen to podcasts because they keep me awake. And incidentally, the one I was listening to was about the neuroscience behind memory, how we acquire memories, how we distill which memories we keep, which ones manage to be the most potent and blunt in our minds, and which ones sort of peter away. So I hadn't really noticed myself falling into a conversation about what I'm going to coin as memory politics and how those show up in the arts and how they're relevant to the arts, especially when we're talking about social movements. The memory is a key component of that, whether we view it as explicitly that way or not. But the privilege of living in St. Louis and being around social activists and around artists is that they are already entrenched in that conversation and are very open and welcoming and warm and want to bring people into that conversation as well. So getting to my next point. A year ago, I went to see a poet named T.J. Jarrett in St. Louis. She's a Nashville native like myself. And during her set, she had read a very interesting piece about Mary Turner, awful case of lynching from the early 20th century. And so this is the poem. It's very short, and I just want to start there before I get into the rest of my brain dump today. It's called What We Say to the Tree from Mary Turner, burned and hanged May 17, 1918. Split the throat, sir, if my complaints weary you. I will continue my protests in silence. Yes, sir, I will march out of this body as you ask. I will take my leave. Light me so I may curse the dark. I promise I will find words for it and whisper them to the leaves. When the wind picks up, they will carry. And because I'm a teacher, I'm going to ask you to do something. I want everyone to think of something positive that happened to them. Saw lots of eyes roll back. That was really cute. Think of something positive that happened. It can be your first date, when you got married, you had your quintuplets, got your best job, whatever the case may be. It was something positive that happened to you. Right? You want to take notice of all the sensations therein. If you're like most people, you probably went through like this Rolodex of awesome things that happened in the past 6 months, as we mostly do. What I just asked you to do was to abstractly remove yourself from the poem that I just read to you. I asked you to soothe yourself, to think of something pleasant, to sort of, take an aspirin out of the headache I just put you through of having to recall such a traumatic, terrible, grotesque part of our history. Right? The point here is that we most frequently return to memories when they are something that comforts us and makes us feel better about the human condition. This honestly, to me, is a misuse of the power of memory. We want to get away from those negative memories, those negative feelings, because they have a tendency to linger, right? They get stored into these little boxes in our brain and we can't erase them. And so we go out of our way to avoid them and not contract new ones, new negative experiences. And that initiative to ignore negative experiences and to try and remove and oppress negative memories is indicative of a fear we have of remembering the past. So I could have asked you to tell me about the first time you touched a hot stove or something terrible that happened to you as a child, and you'd probably be able to remember that in an instant. We all have that like worst memory that took place in our lives. So those nights on the roof with Lindsay are fond memories, right, for me. And they're much more about the building of sisterhood, and there's so much beautiful ness that I can't really express anymore. It's something that I can feel, but I can't see the way I can see traumas that have taken place in my life. I remember everything down to the way my jaw was shaking when I had my first awful job interview. I remember the way my grandmother's skin looked on her deathbed. I remember not being able to breathe for days on end after she died. I can remember all of those things much more potently than my first kiss when I was 12. Chronology has nothing to do with it. It's the depth, how deeply it pierces you when you contract a new memory. So the point is, we can recall pain, guilt, frustration, humiliation much more aggressively than we do positive memories. The sensations themselves bear more weight, and thus we try to bury them and avoid contracting new ones. They make us too uncomfortable, and they overstay their welcome. What we need to realize, though, is that bury and avoid are very contradictory terms when we're talking about memory and forward mobility. It is due to instinct that we most potently remember the things that hurt us and hurt our communities. It's a survival technique in which we learn from our mistakes or the mistakes of others, because memories afford us a retroactive agency that's needed in the avoidance of pain. In short, being uncomfortable is actually what makes us stronger. We don't enact things like Black Lives Matter and do protests and have advocacy institutes and have dialogues and conversation without acknowledging the thing that we are talking about, the reason those things exist. But it's difficult to really see that in the moment. So the poem I'm going to read for you at the end touches on these issues, but frankly, I don't like reading it out loud. I don't like bringing it into polite spaces. And polite politics are based on exactly that. They're built on the fact that people don't take kindly to being uncomfortable, which breeds people like the friend I introduced earlier. She's not comfortable thinking about the civil rights movement and sit-ins and police dogs and water hoses and lynching. She's not comfortable thinking about that, so why do we need to have a conversation? That's essentially the undercurrent there. So this is all a kosher way of saying slavery, Jim Crow, lynching, those things happened in the past. We don't need to talk about them anymore. Or there's a much more fashion-forward version of that we hear all the time called All Lives Matter. It's all the same rhetoric. It's a refusal to look toward the past because it is too uncomfortable and too much guilt-inducing. The fault in these claims is that you can't compare light to dark, sound to silence, blood to water without acknowledging what comes before it. You can say that I want to move toward greener pastures, but if you don't remember having seen or touched the dull ones, you don't know what's good on the other side. So you can apply that to a societal framework, right? You can say that society is getting better, but if you're unwilling to look at what that society was like beforehand, your point is moot. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're comparing your circumstances to. So in the end, to try and do all of this is sort of a mental side effect. It comes from being too comfortable and being too placid and having selective memory. Essentially, it's the lazy version of social optimism and social justice and movement, is laziness. But naturally, we're soothed by our ability to take factions and faces and environments and components of our past and sort of dilute them, right? To sort of work our way through the grief. However, the power of memory is not so much its ability to placate, but more so its ability to disrupt, disturb, and disquiet, to get us moving, to get us excited, even if that comes at a cost of being pained in some way. If our memories are only giving us comfort, then they're really just the gateway drug to complicity. They work against us. They work against our animal integrity, which is to stay out of cycles of despair and harm. We can't learn lessons in stasis, and we can't teach lessons in stasis. When we cut conversations short, when we say slavery is over, Rodney King is over, we don't need to talk about it anymore, we keep ourselves from moving forward even further. We dilute the experiences of people like Michael Brown. So while I was working on my graduate thesis, I had entered a poem of my own called Lowndes 1918, and it was not nearly as, and I'm not being modest here, it was not as pretty as T.J. Jarrett's very early poem. But I wanted to start being part of a conversation about memory and history. I wanted to know more about Mary Turner and other victims of racial violence that perhaps I hadn't exposed myself to and wasn't exposed to me during my education. But during that writing process, something else terrible happened, which was the shooting of Pulse, when a group of queer and trans people of color were minding their own business, and they were gunned down like animals. Although I was in the middle of a writing process, which typically for me is my catharsis amid social upheaval and turbulence, this was a different kind of feeling, and I'll tell you why. This one was a feeling of being half African American, but also half Arab. This was a feeling of being queer, but also being cisgendered and being in a interracial relationship with a white cisgendered man. I was straddling a lot of different lines, and I wasn't sure how to react to those. So I had a few different reactions. The first reaction was to put on my suburban face that I figured out when I was very young, living in mostly white neighborhoods of, oh, this really sucks, but everything's gonna get better, right? No, that was the most pointless thing I could have said. And I didn't believe it when it came out of my mouth when I started writing these poems about blind social optimism. The next reaction was to dwell and get angry. Now, I don't think that that was super productive either, but it did force me to look back at historical precedent. What were all the events that led up to this? Who are other victims who maybe I wasn't old enough or socially aware enough to have recognized as they were happening? I was alive during Rodney King, but I was a child. I was a child in a very different environment. And so engaging with those memories and those histories did not come as naturally to me then. Now, some good things came out of this. It was my first entrance into social justice work, which was to join a protest and pick out my, I had hair back then, but to pick out my hair a little bit more and march in the street in protest of the whitewash gaggle parade that we call Pride every year. And that felt really good. And so this kick-started my third reaction to the Orlando shooting and other injustices that came after. But it was much more complicated. I wanted to start writing poems that weren't just about my experience as a certain demographic of woman or the experiences of people that I was marching with on the street. I wanted to look at how these injustices as old as slavery, somewhere in the middle as Mary Turner's lynching, to Rodney King, to Michael Brown, and the people who are probably being attacked right now. I wanted to see how I could integrate those voices into one short, succinct poem. Did I pull that off? I'm not totally sure, but I'm going to test it on you today. I returned to art and writing, which is the fuel to me, that's the engine to me that has fueled a collective memory of not only yourself, but of your community. I accepted the fact that I really couldn't talk about shootings or hangings without talking about many of them at once, which is what sprang this poem that I'm going to close with. I'm still trying to figure out what it's really about, but I hope that you all are able to get something from it and maybe take those feelings and those experiences and put them into the art project that David has graciously generated for you today. Entertaining the distance between body and machine. I read this in memory of Michael Brown Jr. and others, so that maybe their names will not be forgotten as we seek change in our community. When the name drop turns faceless like a thumb, when the riot is a mouth sore before the turret, when the movement's stalling is a dead end, this time, please suppose the cage screen between the door and the window, this piece of a machine could take its own approach to erasure. The pores filtering hands into guns and breathe to wait to see what you can do. Disfigure the Rolodex of blood-swelled, lockjawed black boys dead by so-and-so. Imagine raising the hand from the arm, facing the steel bowl. Reconstruct the mechanics of being target practice for the machine. Thank you.
Just over a year ago, we started this loom back here in the corner. The first time we had a community work on it, it was remembering Michael Brown 2 years after he passed away. So I invite you to take a strip of fabric, and you can write your prayer, your hope, your meditation, your thoughts around today, around memory, around place, around ending injustice. You can write it on a strip of fabric and then weave it into the loom, or you can just weave a piece of string and that can be your meditation. The in and out, over, under, the act of weaving. It'll be here all day long and also this evening. So during transitions or this evening, feel free to participate. Thank you.
Once again, can we thank Professor Walls? Can we celebrate Professor Walls? I did not acknowledge her teaching assignments in some of St. Louis's most prestigious schools here. We're honored to have her, and also the work that continues to speak volumes that David initiated and commissioned as commissioned through the center, and now is continuing to grow, and we hope that you will take advantage of it. So to inspire that, we want to take about 2 or 3 minutes as we transition into our next presentation. I want you to add to the loom, as well as think about in your space and inside of you what we just took in, and how we can ourselves be an creative expression, a reflection in these times. After that break, we'll be joined by our next speaker, Dr. Dynesha Mason-Grissom. All right, so let's take about 3 minutes and then appreciate this work and add to it as well.
kind of treat at home.
Yeah, and I heard you say that. I said, wow, man.
Right, as we shared before the room, there's anytime you feel led to share, and I believe it's all right, David, to add more than one piece of fabric to that beautiful tapestry. So we continue to invite you to add to and to glean from what is our faith in art and art in faith. Even as we're doing those things and centering ourselves in this moment, I want to invite our next presenter. Have to practice this because we've known each other for a very long time. We knew each other before we were we thought about our adult lives and what professions would be. But I'm so glad to be able to call her friend and doctor in the person of Dr. Dynesha Mason Grissom. She is a clinical psychologist and practicing counselor at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. And she is not only trained in that profession, but we went through undergrad together. She actually studied, and then some of y'all graduated summa cum laude, magna cum laude. I graduated a whole lot of prayer and fasting, on time. but no, she had distinguished herself then, and then one day, walking through the halls of Christian Theological Seminary, again, ran into my sister friend, and we prayed and encouraged each other. And she was a good counselor. I told her, you're going to be a great counselor, because she got me through seminary. Amen. Amen. She said, it's going to be all right. She said, you might not end with everybody you started with, but you're going to be all right. She was a prophetess. No, but seriously, we ate a lot of chicken on Thursdays. Thursdays was chicken day at the Christian Theological Seminary in Indianapolis, Indiana. But I shared too much already. But she is an accomplished, not only clinician, but she did not leave both her theological training and her faith tradition at the door of her office. She carries that, she witnesses that, and she is truly both a scholar and practitioner, and I'm excited that she's here with the tremendous work that she's doing with the topic that she's covering for us. So please welcome my friend, my sister, Dr. Mason Grissom, to this podium.
Good afternoon. Can you all hear me? So my name is Dr. Mason Grissom. I say that because I went through 13 years of a doctoral program in counseling psychology. And so I just graduated in May. Thank you. So every moment that I get an opportunity to call myself Dr. Mason Grissom, I take every opportunity. Amen. It was earned. It was earned through prayer, much study, lots of tears, and a lot of hard work. Resilience, dedication, all of those things. So I'm a mental health clinician, as well as a mental and behavioral health care advocate. That's my form of social activism. And today I want to provoke you to think about disparities in the mental health and behavioral health care system in the U.S., particularly as it relates to the diagnosis and treatment of PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. I want to go about it in a different way. Instead of sharing statistics with you or lecturing you on disparities in the diagnosis and treatment of PTSD, or sharing my recent research on Black emerging adults, bereavement and grief and trauma, I want to take you on a journey. I want you to imagine the faces of survivors of trauma and share with you how they're treated. I will be describing and sharing in graphic detail some information about death and trauma. So if you're not able to tolerate hearing or seeing or imagining this type of information, please feel free to excuse yourself. I won't be offended. So I want you to start by, and if you want to close your eyes, feel free to do so. Imagining that your phone just discharged as you are leaving work to pick up your youngest child from daycare. You get in the car, begin charging up your phone, and when it turns on, immediately you are inundated with over 250 notifications and messages. In fact, your phone is glitching because you're getting call after call after call. You answer. The voice on the other end says that one of your children was shot and killed walking home from school. Imagine hearing gunshots outside of your home. Pop, 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 pop. Then an eerie silence, followed by high-pitched screams for help. People running in the streets, panicked, confused, shocked, frantically, searching for help, looking for safety, calling for help, wanting someone, anyone, to come and save their friend, your neighbor. Imagine that you and your friend are leaving the local bar on a Saturday night/Sunday morning, and you're headed out to your car. Someone speeds by, shooting out of the window. You and your friend hit the ground. Your heart is racing, but you're still breathing. You tap your friend to see if they are okay. They were hit. They're not breathing. They're dead. Can you imagine the wave of emotions and thoughts, the overwhelming fear and panic that one must feel in each of these situations? What images come to your mind when you imagine these horrific, terrifying, dramatic, and gruesome events? What images are played over and over in the news? How are the survivors of the traumatic injustices depicted? Do you share their grief? Do you have a desire to reach out and support them, comfort them, embrace them, encourage them, love them, console them, hold their hand and walk with them through their journey of fear, pain, and agony, intense rage, confusion, sadness, desperation, trauma? This is what trauma looks like. Do you have a picture in mind yet? What do the news headlines say? What about social media? Do they look like this? Do you think to yourself, my God, those poor families, those poor kids, they were so young, how tragic. Do you say a silent prayer for them? Do you hold your loved ones tighter at night because you know, there but for the grace of God I go? Do you imagine that their hearts will be hurting for years to come and their lives will be changed forever? Do you realize that they will have to endure months of investigations, court hearings, and media visibility that feels intrusive? The nation will grieve with them. Vigils will be held across the nation to honor the life of the deceased. GoFundMe pages will be taken out to help the family with unexpected expenses. Scholarship funds will be developed in order to honor the deceased. Lawmakers will begin lobbying for harsher penalties for X behavior. The survivors of these traumatic death experiences, the families and friends, they will be regarded by the media as strong and virtuous. They will be called resilient. People will have empathy for them as they witness them struggling to adjust to life after their traumatic loss. They will extend a helping hand when they are found pulled on the side of the road, crying, or in a local bar, drinking, starting bar fights, or driving home drunk and reckless. If they're transported to the hospital after overdosing on drugs or prescription pain medication that was intended to calm their nerves, or God forbid they were attempting suicide, they will receive the best psychiatric care to help them with their recovery. Their employers will encourage them to stay home and recover. Church congregations will send food and other resources. Parishioners will pray and fast with them as a collective. We are rooting for them. We see them. We acknowledge them and their pain, their trauma, and their experiences. We embrace them, lift them up, support them, encourage them. We empathize with them and mourn with them. And as a nation, we hope and pray that they will overcome their traumatic loss. We wait anxiously to hear about their stories of overcoming and victory over the trauma that they and their families survived. You remember earlier when I asked you if you had a picture in mind and to think about what news headlines would read or what would be portrayed on social media? Did any of these images come to mind? Because this is also what pain, fear, and agony, intense rage, confusion, sadness, desperation, trauma. This is what trauma looks like. Did you have this picture in your mind? But the headlines, unfortunately, no, the headlines don't ask why. The headlines don't declare horror or call us to consider the unthinkable has happened. The headlines don't even recognize that a child, someone's baby, has been murdered they too must endure months of investigations, court hearings, and media visibility that feels intrusive. To make matters worse, the crimes committed against them and their loved ones are often referred to as justified. The survivors of these traumatic events aren't characterized as strong or resilient or virtuous. We don't even empathize with them. We don't encourage them. We don't root for them to overcome the horrific and traumatic loss that they experienced. We don't feel for them when they are found abusing substances to numb their pain, overdosing on pain medication, or attempting suicide. We don't hold them up when the pain is too much to endure. No, unfortunately, in the United States, trauma and the treatment of trauma is still reserved for our white citizens. When people of color take to the streets to protest and call attention to an injustice, they are criminalized. They are referred to as thugs, rioters, disruptors of peace. They are told to go home and stay home. We don't want to witness their pain and trauma. We don't even call it pain and trauma. We call it rage, anger, hate. But the pain as a result of the trauma that they have experienced is no different than the pain suffered as a result of the trauma that white survivors experience. Racism is still alive in the United States of America. It impacts every system and every agency in society, including our mental health and behavioral health systems. This is not news. It's the reason that so many people of color, particularly Black people, don't trust hospitals and psychiatric care units and behavioral health care systems and don't look to them to seek help. Black people know that when they go to the hospital, they won't be greeted with empathy. They will not receive the best treatment for substance abuse and trauma. Instead, they will be blamed for their inability to hold it together. Their pain, collectively and individually, will be forgotten. They will be silenced. They will be ignored. No one will reach out to offer them the services that they need to help foster resilience or to help them overcome their traumatic loss. You see, we continue to trick ourselves into believing that we live in a just society where people have equal opportunities. But when your opportunities for health, wellness, wholeness, wealth, and longevity rest behind a veil that renders you less than, invisible, unworthy, and criminal, how can you access your opportunities? How can you access your justice? We don't look at these people as deserving of help and suffering from trauma. We look at them as thugs and rioters and disruptors of peace. Instead of offering them counseling and support and resources to recover and be resilient, we offer them silence, shame, blame, and look upon them with disdain. There is no justice for Black people who have survived trauma. Even that which we could extend for free, empathy, prayers, support, encouragement, and resources, we deny them. Instead, we have expectations. We expect that they will remain silent. We expect that they will remain invisible. So why is all of this important? Today, as we come together on the anniversary of Michael Brown's murder, we don't want to overlook, ignore, or minimize the trauma that the members of the Ferguson community endured. Yes, after this murder, some people were able to return to life as normal. Every once in a while, they thought about the tragedy that occurred in their backyard and said a prayer for family members and friends. But for others, it was not so simple. Their lives were turned upside down. Sleep didn't come easy anymore. They couldn't focus or concentrate. They had nightmares of being murdered and left to die in the middle of the road. They were irritable, withdrawn, filled with anxiety, anger, sadness. They feared leaving home and did not think that the world was a safe place for them anymore. When they saw information about Michael Brown's death on their social media feed or television, they tried to avoid it, but it would suck them in. They would watch countless hours of media coverage, often looking at repeats of information they had just viewed hours ago. They promised themselves that they wouldn't watch it, but they could not avoid it. It was too personal. Their hearts began racing, and they were filled with sheer panic when an officer drove by them on the street or rolled up behind their car when they were driving. They couldn't get the images of his lifeless body laying in the middle of the street out of their mind. The images were most vivid when they laid their head down to sleep at night. They began frantically researching about their rights as a citizen who was approached by a police officer. Do I have to show my identification? When can I walk away? Do I have a right to ask why I'm being stopped? Am I free to go or am I being detained? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, sir. No, ma'am. Are my hands visible? Excuse me, officer. I do not consent to any searches of my private property. They research laws in different states. Loud noises startle them. The sound of fireworks or a car backfiring paralyzes them. They avoid going to places they once enjoyed because it's too crowded or they feel unsafe there. That smile and energy that they once had that lit up a room was replaced by a sad gaze, lowered eyes, and the constant appearance of being in deep thought. But there are no words. An occasional smoke became a nightly routine and was followed by a few sips, which became a pint. And this was just to help calm my nerves. They began missing days at work. They were fired. They found out reasons to argue with their loved ones. They ostracized everyone around them and they alienated themselves. Whereas they used to talk about becoming an entrepreneur, they no longer felt encouraged or excited about or hopeful for anything. They just existed. These are the survivors from the murder of Michael Brown and countless other Black men, women, and children whose lives have been ended in violence. They live, breathe, and reside in this community and communities all over the United States. Some might even be sitting next to you. We have overlooked and minimized their experiences. We don't call their experiences PTSD. In fact, we don't call it anything at all. We take pictures of them while they are in pain. Weeks later, we tell them to get over it. We've moved on. The story's not important anymore, but they're still struggling 3 months later, 1 year later, 3 years later. Their faces are still dim. I ask you, actually, no, I implore you to not allow their faces, their stories, their experiences, their pain and struggle to be overlooked. Treat these faces with the same empathy, care, and love that you would these faces. Provide the same opportunities and resources and advocacy for healing and recovery from treatment of PTSD for these faces that you would these faces. Thank you. I hope this message encourages you to reframe your conversations about trauma and pain.
Thank you, Dr. Mason Grissom. Amen. I don't know about you, take a deep breath. Well, we are going to keep it rolling, and what we'll do is something similar to what we did in the first half, is bring our presenters back up to ask very specific questions, if that's okay. All right, so we want to continue Again, thank you. I am excited about my new sister friend, and we are grateful to have from the Vanderbilt School of Divinity, Dr. Phillis Sheppard. Amen. You need me? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, go Commodores. I was like, go Doors. I was like, isn't that a hallucinogenic group or something? Like, that's how you raise your head. I forgot. Yeah, he used to go to Vanderbilt. Yeah. I was like, okay. Yes, yeah, SEC, yay. I'm sorry, Dr. Sheppard. Phil Sheppard is a scholar and a activist and just a dear spirit, first of all. And she comes into the place from the time that we talked on the phone till she walked in the room. It's just light. It's just light. So I'm thankful for her being with us on today. We lifted up the fact that she is part of a growing movement and exercise at Vanderbilt around radical public witness and theology, and we have already encouraged, and I know you'll do likewise, to invite folks to come out to that work, to the collaborative that is in September of next month. She specifically focuses her work around psychoanalysts. She is a lesbian woman and psychoanalyst serving on the faculty of Vanderbilt, and her work around womanist and practical theology has given her tremendous noteworthiness, but most of all, she had something to say today, and I can't wait to hear from her and for us to grow this relationship and the continuum of support that is activism. So bring my sister, and welcome my sister as she comes in her own way, Dr. Phillis Sheppard of the Vanderbilt Divinity School. Hear ye her.
Just going to bring that clip on for me. By way of getting started, I do want to say that I bring greetings from my dean, Dr. Emily Towns, who's very excited about the work that you all are doing here in this day in particular. Greetings. The title today is Remembering Pulse, the Ethics of Memory and Reflection. And I would like to begin by having us remember this past June of this year. And so I'm saying that this past June, if social media is any indication, many groups and individuals remembered the massacre that was inflicted on brown and black bodies at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida. Inflicted on the folks visiting there, their families, and the communities in which they lived. This has raised several questions for me, and given our time, I won't get to them all. But the questions that are going around in my head are, what ethical demands do memory, memorials, and reflection make on us? Let me repeat that. What ethical demands do memory, memorials, and reflection make on us? Do we remember so as not to forget? If not forgetting is the work or purpose of memory and reflection, how does memory and reflection bring about social justice? Is memory for the living, the dead, or the just future? And what does care of memory look like for those traumatized by memory, remembering? We've already heard part of what care looks like. On the one hand, these are just questions that I wrestle with. However, on the other hand, they are not new to me or to this time in which we live. There is wisdom before us, wisdom among us, So to get started, I ask you to join me with your hearts and your minds as we offer libation to the ancestors and the living as a way to begin. We offer libation to the ancestors and the important memories they have passed down to us. Whatever wisdom we carry, we did not come by it alone. And from the many who came before us, both the living, we offer libation. Are there names that you would add of the living who imparted wisdom? Hattie Booker Peterson, great-grandmother. Are there those who have gone before us, whose memory nourishes us even now? These names, these souls, these people are now ours to carry, be nourished by. The morning of the Pulse massacre, I wrote this on my Facebook page. Morning. The depth of hatred and persistence of violence sometimes leaves me beyond rage, beyond despair, beyond hope. Even so, I pray this morning for our kinfolk, kindred souls in Orlando. May individuals and communities gather together to seek a way forward toward justice, care, and tender love. May the sackcloths of lament and righteous action be intertwined. May we not grow too weary. Let us remember, let us pray in your mercy. Later that day, in speaking with my dean, I said, I think I need to go to Orlando. She said, okay. Talked to Pamela Lightsey later, and I said, Pamela, this thing in Orlando, I didn't finish it. She said, pack your bags. I've got a suite, hotel suite, and I'm renting a car. I'll pick you up at the airport, and I will drive you around. You see what she's like. I packed my bags. I went to Orlando to be available to those who needed pastoral care and counseling. That was the purpose. That was the request. Pamela's niece was there. She had said, Pamela, come. Let me say this, the terror of violence runs deep if you are in the group targeted. This time was a painful ministry of presence and protest. Though the shooting wreaked havoc on so many people in both spiritual and emotional ways, I also found that in the context of a faith community gathering together to share, cry, pray, and reach out to each other, this congregation, Oasis Fellowship, found a way forward as a community to care for the broader community. Their setting became a place where many who were not familiar with this church previously could come and grieve. Intersectionality and pulse. Now, if you were watching the news during this time, you heard all the news around One Orlando. And I applaud the work, the immediate response of Orlando to want to attend to those who were traumatized, beyond those immediately connected to Pulse. But listen to this from Cecilia Alderando. She wrote this after the Pulse massacre in a piece called Sanctuary After Pulse. The overwhelming majority of people who died were Latinx. If you look at the list of the dead, it's blatant. Sotomayor, Gonzalez Cruz, Torres, Flores, Velasquez Rivera. Why should this matter? Because for queer people of color, the need for sanctuary is that much greater. 70% of anti-LGBT murder victims in the US are people of color. LGBT people of color are more likely to live in poverty. The risk of youth suicide is higher. They are more likely to be kicked out of their homes. There are cultural forces, and they often work together in especially poisonous ways. One of the poisonous ways cultural forces work, one of the ways cultural forces work is to try to make us forget, to make us think that our remembering is meaningless. And by meaningless, I mean, for example, that we have memorials, but we create them to take the life or feeling out of the horror. Lots of words, no affect, no feeling. So for example, when we, Nikki? So when we were in Orlando at the site shown in the video, so you know that there were 49 plus the shooter. So 49 names. These appeared overnight. Pamela and I and our niece went, and upon seeing this, I committed to praying a prayer and saying out loud each person's name. A very slow meditation walk. Going one. Out of the corner of my eye, I see media people, but they're, kind of that, that's fine. I get to maybe number 7. A young white woman, about 35, which is young to me, comes up and says, she interrupts me, gently touches me, and says, "May I ask you a question?" "No, may I talk to you?" And I said, "I beg your pardon?" And she said, "I'd like to ask you a question." I said, "All right." She said, "Do you know any of these people?" I said, "These are my brothers and sisters." And she said, well, can I ask you a question?" I said, "All right." She said, "Obama's in town. What do you think about that?" What do you think of this? Up here. Here at this place of memory, grief, and protest, this was her question. This required an internal ethical reflection on my part. One of which, what am I doing here and why? That went through my head. And what is she doing here and why? What is the work that this memorial demands? My answer to her was, "No, you may not ask me a question." She said, "Why not?" And she was offended. She seemed to think it was her right as a reporter to disrupt what was happening for her purposes, which did not align with the work or aim of the memorial, to remember those massacred and to grieve the loss that family, friends, and communities were experiencing. The reporter, in my view, wanted to shift me and us from linking protest, making public the atrocity in symbolic form, and the sacred, praying at the site. Her action, I believe, was not personal, but was designed to make us forget, to make us shift from the reality of injustice, to quell, to diminish the power of public grief and anger, to celebrating that the president was on site. I told her, because this time is not about you and your news story about President Obama. It is about those appointed before us. I was angry, but I returned to the moral task before me, remembering, grieving, resisting, protesting in prayer. How does or how might public remembering lead or point toward justice making? I thought of Emmett Till's mother while there, and how she refused to have his casket closed and let news outlets take pictures of his desecrated, battered, murdered body. She said, "Let the world see what they have done to my baby." Her baby was her Black adolescent, trying to grow up, son. Make the world see grief, anger, and outrage. I remember reading that Michael Brown's mother said, "Never mind what you've heard or think or know about Michael Brown, or about me, for that matter. You don't know about life. You don't know about me. Now, you might know something, some snippet, some half moment in time, but you know nothing about my son's life and what it meant." An 18-second video doesn't tell you anything about 18 years. Remembering the son that she loves by refusing to let others have the last word, memory the responsibility on our lives. Memorials, memory, remembering in the face of injustice, violent injustice, needs to shake us to set our feet in the right direction. One way this happened while we were in Orlando, so as I said, one of the things they did is immediately set up emergency counseling. So part of what motivated me to go, now part of it is memory. Think of all the things we know historically about African Americans and medical care and lack thereof. I said to Pamela, you know damn well they're not going to have people of color as counselors, crisis counselors. This is before we even got there. I said, they're not going to be in the right places. So we get there and they have these 3 counseling centers. One is at a Unitarian church that is, 3 miles, 4 miles? So nobody Black is driving out there. One is at the LGBT center in Orlando. There's one, and it's there. And the third one, the city had, and really you'd have to be, I don't know how desperate you'd have to be to try to get through this maze of buildings, etc. Just getting into the parking lot. So Pamela and I go to the LGBT center. We think they'll probably be the least resistant. We get there, we walk up to the door, and we're at the door. This is the LGBT center that's supposed to be receiving people who are traumatized. We get there, and there is a city cop in the doorway, one here, and on the other side, one higher is what I think security. And they're both khaki. And so we come up to the door, and they say, I will admit they were a little bit anxious. So they came up like this. Yes, what we'd like to do is check your purses, and we have to scan you. And Pamela Lightsey had her glasses down like this. She looks at them, and she looks over and she says, "These are your people," meaning the counseling people. That's what she said. And I said, and I don't do this. Unlike you, I graduated 100 years ago. I almost never say I'm Dr. anything. I looked at the man and I said, well, I'm Dr. Phillis Sheppard. I'm a psychoanalyst, and I'd like to tell you what I'd like to do. Now, I was nervous because they were jittery, but I thought, this is the most ridiculous thing. Whatever privilege I have in doctor in front of my name. People coming there traumatized, even if they have doctor in front of their name, reverend in front of their name, it's not available when you're traumatized. I said, I'd like to find out what services you have here for people of color. They said, well, okay, come on in. We don't know. We'll get someone to talk to you. Was it 45 minutes later? 45 minutes later, someone came out to inform us what we already knew. They didn't have any counselors of color available, and we went to the other two counseling sites. They didn't have counselors of color available. They had a list that people could sign on. You know, like I signed onto the list before I got there. There were two people of color, one woman, Latina woman, and myself. And they did not make use of us. Which was fine because the people who were coming there were not people. I say this to say, remembering has to have efficacy. Memorials have to have efficacy. It is not enough to remember. It's got to set our feet in a certain direction. It has to disrupt us. In some church settings, some church settings, they say it has to convict us. It has to convict us. We also have to ask, what happens when we do not remember? And I'll give you an example of me not remembering. So after the election, the day after the election, I was teaching a class, Pastoral Care and Community Justice. And before the election, I had come up with this activity, a theological reflection on faith and politics. So I knew we were going to do this, and what we're going to do is reflect on some questions, which is my way, and we're going to create posters and have them in the hallway at the seminary. What I thought would be provocative, challenging, anyway. Had my class. My class was 12 African American students, 1 Latina woman, and 3 white students. And after the election, they're meeting in the groups. They are enraged. Enraged. So we're going on and they're creating, they're talking, they're creating these posters. And one student, this first poster said, "Fuck white people." Keep in mind, everybody hanging in the hallway at the divinity school. So you ask, maybe, what did I forget? I forgot momentarily that the discussion I had planned was not just an intellectual discussion, and I forgot how for some students, folks a lot younger than me, this felt like such a betrayal that they hadn't experienced before. And I couldn't have imagined. In the end, he changed his poster through group discussion to "fuck whiteness." It had the same effect as if he had left the first poster in the hallway. Because institutions forget too. So for instance, in the classes I teach, we talk about whiteness, white supremacy, we talk about injustice. I forget that not everybody's talking about that in class. So people coming down the hallways, people come down the hallways who work in the building, who are cleaners. Maybe they've heard white supremacy, but they're not quite sure they're getting the full benefits of it. So when they read that, they have a different experience. We have to remember a whole bunch of stuff. My class, I have students who are in that class come to me now and say, "That was traumatic." They've signed up for other classes, but they say that was traumatic. One student said it was too soon. Another student, a white student, said, "I will never be the same kind of white person. I don't know what kind of person I'll be, but I will never be the same kind of white person after that." After I returned from Orlando, I wrote this on my Facebook: "Holy grief and spirit-filled mourning, righteous love and justice-seeking anger. Guide my steps, gather my thoughts, and form the words of my mouth, always and always." A day later, I wrote ethical demands. To be a Black lesbian womanist is to be committed to a world bent toward justice and transformed by love. Do we have a final libation? May our remembering be a blessing, an action for justice, and a commitment to love. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Sheppard. Amen. It's all right, breathe. Breathe. Before we have our final presentation, I want to ask of us, I think it would be a good place to take a little bit of a break, and if we can honor that 5 minutes in full, we'll come back and we'll have our dear sister, the great Reverend Fisher Stewart, to come and share with us. And then while we're in the midst of this break, again, continue to add to the Loom, continue to network and encourage each other. And if I could have all our presenters come up front here real quick and capture your image in real time before we have to disembark or before you get inundated with your admirers here. I'd love for that to happen. So let's take 5 minutes. It is now just a little bit before 2. So exactly at 2:05, we're going to come back in here and take it into the home stretch. All right? All right. God bless you.